Hello, it's Stefan Pape here from HeyUGuys, and we're at the Toronto Film Festival on the very opening day.
And I'm Paul Heath from thehollywoodnews.com.
And we've just seen the opening film of the festival, The Magnificent Seven by Antoine Fuqua, and we're now going to be giving our reaction to you ahead of the premiere tonight. So what did you make of the film, Paul?
It's one of those films that does take its time in getting started, I thought. It took absolutely ages for me to get into the story. Not really any one thing, to be honest. It was kind of like a great big opening, a great grand entrance by Denzel Washington. Very cliched, I thought, in his introduction into the film, and at various points throughout. So, you know, the opening of the saloon doors, and you know, the lowering of the hat and that sort of thing. And later on, you know, when people got shot, they fell into like empty coffins and that sort of thing. Did you get that?
Yeah. Well, I just think that I think just generally speaking, the Western is quite a difficult genre to tackle in modern cinema because it's a genre that's kind of steeped in cinematic tradition. So you kind of have to have that kind of romantic, quite affectionate eye for the genre, and then create and craft something quite new. And I wasn't quite sure if Antoine Fuqua got that balance quite right. I feel like it was traditionalist in some regards and to his benefit, and then at other times to his detriment. And I wasn't sure if it was if it felt a bit like a pastiche at times, and I wasn't quite sure if it felt modern enough. But I did like the kind of diversity in the casting and having obviously one of the most integral roles being a female character, you know, and obviously not just an important role in the film, but she wasn't a damsel in distress. You know, she actually was a well-rounded
gun-toting, almost heroine, isn't she?
Yeah, exactly.
Really, towards the end. And also, I mean, obviously, you've got Peter Sarsgaard. He's the first person you see in the film.
Yeah, I love to introducing the villain first. I'm a big fan of that technique, actually.
Yeah, and he's a bit of a badass. He's it's a very good, interesting character, and the way he plays it is very interesting as well. It's almost, I think I wrote in my review that it's sort of part Christoph Waltz, part old school Gary Oldman.
Yeah.
And in his execution. But, you know, it starts off very well with that opening scene. I thought he's fantastic. And he pops up at various points throughout, obviously. So
I thought he actually played the role how I had hoped Jared Leto would have played the Joker, which was to have that lack of remorse and that kind of emptiness behind the eyes where you just feel that person's capable of doing anything. And I think when you've got a film like this, the only thing for me as important as the hero, obviously, of course, is the villain. And I think that this film thrived in that aspect. I think it had a great villain. But it was the heroes I had a slight issue with. I felt it was quite generic, and the whole thing kind of followed this almost formula where it felt like a film designed for trailers. So it was all about the one-liners. It felt like there was so many moments in the film that you thought, that felt like it was going to be the perfect moment in a trailer. It didn't feel like it had it wasn't linear enough. I mean, and shots of them kind of twirling guns and then putting in their holsters. And it's like, yeah, we've seen that a million times. It didn't quite feel like it didn't have much edge, I don't think, to it.
I think we've just come out of the press conference and Antoine Fuqua actually said, you know, so he was asked the question, what's the relevance of being a central black character, and what's the relevance of this, that, and the other? He's like, it's just a movie, man. You know, and at the end of the day, it does come across as very glossy, very, you know, with the cliche thing again. Denzel Washington as a lead role. I mean, we've said before that he doesn't really have a lot to do, does he?
He doesn't.
Not really.
No, it's quite a brooding performance in this one. But again, he's almost like a cipher. Everything kind of happens around him in this instance, I think. But I do think, though, that although it is kind of pure entertainment, I think even though it's lacking a message as such, I do think that having a black protagonist did help this movie in a sense that this film thrives off the notion of the underdog. And you know, I mean, the whole point is that it's this small little town that have to defeat a much more formidable army that's sort of quadruple the size of what they've got to offer. And having that character as the lead role just sort of enforced that notion in a sense. You know, he walked into a bar right at the beginning of the film, the first time you meet him, and they said, "Oh, we're not serving you in this bar." You know, and he's already on the back foot straight away. I mean, often when you get these movies, you meet your hero, and from the offset, they're the coolest guy in town. They walk in, and everyone's afraid of them. But in this instance, he was actually on the back foot.
Yeah, he was,
because he was the only black guy in a white land, you know, in a white village, a white town. And I think that it actually helped enforce the notion of the underdog, which really, for me, what this film and what the original film and it's obviously Seven Samurai, they thrive off is the idea that it is this kind of perennial story of the underdog, which is why I think this story still works and why we can almost justify it existing in a contemporary kind of landscape. I feel it's more just the execution of the film doesn't quite feel like it's got enough oomph to it.
Yeah, and you've got, you know, and obviously talking just quick about the other characters, you've got Chris Pratt, obviously, just basically being Chris Pratt.
Lots of quite contrived one-liners in this instance.
You know, he's a magician, he's a gambler, he's a drunk, he gives a wink of the eye every 10 seconds, it feels like. And of course, you've got Ethan Hawke as well, so you've got the training day teaming of the director and the two stars of that film, which is like 25 years old, is it?
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been a little while.
But that's what I actually think the Ethan Hawke character and Vincent D'Onofrio as well. Did I get that right? That's a tough one.
He's great. He's really good.
Both of those two characters actually give a bit of heart to the movie.
Yes.
They've got a bit more nuance to them.
Yeah.
They're not just this generic kind of like cowboy walking around, with the sun glistening off their face and winking at women chewing kind of straw, or whatever like that.
Well, there is a lot of that.
There is a lot of that, but I felt those two characters had a bit more about them.
Yeah.
And I think they were the best two characters in it. But sadly, this is Chris Pratt's movie, really, and Denzel Washington. I think that those two characters are actually less interesting than some of the supporting roles I found.
They are, absolutely. And as I said earlier on, it starts off very slowly, and to continue my point, it gets better. And the last third, I suppose, is one of the best sort of climaxes I've seen. Well, not one of the best of the year, but it's certainly one of the more interesting.
It's one of the best of the festival so far.
Yeah, we've seen one film. We've seen two films. So, but yeah, it's the most action-packed finale of a Magnificent Seven film playing at Toronto 2016.
And there we go. Well, that's all from us now. We're going to go and speak to some of the cast members and hopefully get a chat with Denzel and Antoine Fuqua as well on the red carpet. So stay tuned on Hey You Guys and the Hollywood News, and you'll see our coverage from that.
Cheers.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey You Guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yeah.
Nice.
Hey